Welcome to Betrayal Stories. In today's video, if someone had told me that at the age of 50, with grocery bags resting on my lap and the faint scent of garlic and basil still clinging to my hair, I'd find myself sitting in a parked car with my husband's business partner, my heart racing louder than the relentless patter of rain against the windshield, I would have laughed until my sides hurt. That scenario, so absurd in its possibility, was not something I ever imagined for myself. I had always been the careful one, the dependable wife, the woman who followed the rules, who did what was right. I was cautious, measured, reliable, and checkable in my own quiet way. Yet that evening, a simple ride home would unravel everything I believed about my marriage, about my life, and even about myself. It all started with a seemingly trivial decision, a choice that seemed innocent at first, yet led me down a path I could never have anticipated. Before I dive into this story, I want to know something about you. Take a moment and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Are you in the hustle and bustle of New York? Perhaps in the windy streets of Chicago, or maybe the sun-soaked avenues of Miami? Or could it be a quiet, sleepy town where nothing much ever happens? I want to imagine where you are as this story unfolds because, strangely enough, the emotions you're about to hear, they might resonate with you in ways you don't yet expect. My name is Grace. I'm 50 years old. I've been married for nearly 30 years. My life until that fateful night felt complete in its predictability, not tragic, not glamorous, but steady. I had Mark, my husband, a good man in most ways, slightly distracted, endlessly preoccupied, his mind always somewhere else, buried in work or numbers or schedules. Our son had grown, left the house, and was carving his own path. Most days, it was just me. Me, the ticking kitchen clock. The faint hum of the television filling the silence, and Mark returning home late, smelling faintly of office air mixed with takeout dinners. Isaac entered our lives 3 years ago, introduced simply as Mark's business partner. "This is Isaac," Mark had said, shaking hands in that formal, almost ceremonial way people do when introducing someone who is meant to matter professionally. They spoke about numbers, deals, opportunities, and strategies while I stood nearby, pouring coffee and attempting to appear engaged. Isaac was younger than me, probably in his mid-40s. Tall, calm, quietly confident. He carried himself with a subtle gravity, a presence that didn't demand attention but somehow commanded it anyway. His politeness was genuine, his warmth understated. There was no flirting, no overt charm, just attentive eyes, a slight smile, and a real curiosity in how I was. In the world beyond the surface, at first it was little gestures. After meetings, he'd linger a few minutes longer, helping me carry plates to the kitchen. "How's your back, Grace?" he'd ask, referencing some old complaint. I would brush it off, laughing. My back and I are old friends, I'd say. But the simple fact that he listened, really listened, mattered more than I could articulate. Years of being overlooked, of fading into the background of my own life, had made me almost invisible in ways I hadn't fully acknowledged. Mark wasn't unkind, he was just elsewhere. His mind was always running, always calculating the next move, the next deal, the next problem. With Isaac, everything slowed down. The room narrowed until it was only us. Still, I never imagined anything would happen. I didn't allow myself to think about it, even when a part of me stirred awake at his presence. The stormy night, everything changed, was drenched in storm. The sky had darkened unusually early, heavy clouds pressing down as wind twisted umbrellas into useless shapes. Mark had called, apologetic but hurried. "Grace, I won't make it home tonight. Isaac and I have to meet a client across town. Don't wait up." I remember standing by the stove, a pot of stew simmering quietly, the table set for two. Feeling that familiar pang of disappointment. "Work again?" I muttered under my breath. Still, I decided to step out to visit the neighborhood supermarket. Perhaps it was to escape the stillness of my house, to remind myself I existed outside of routines and domestic spaces. I pulled on my coat, braved the drizzle, and walked down the street. The wind whipping against my cheeks, the rain dotting my eyelashes. Inside the store, life continued obliviously. A child pleaded for candy. An elderly woman compared prices on canned soup. And shoppers moved about with mechanical efficiency. I wandered slowly, picking up fruit, bread, tea, nothing urgent. Nothing vital, while my mind traced the empty spaces of my life. The silence of my house, the background noise of the television, the hollow conversations with Mark. These thoughts circled relentlessly by the time I stepped back outside. The rain had intensified, sharp and insistent. My umbrella forgotten at home. I struggled to shield the groceries from the downpour. That's when I heard my name. Grace. I turned to see a familiar car pulling up. The window rolled down, and there he was, Isaac. Rain gleamed off the roof of the car, droplets sparkling in the headlights. "What are you doing out here in this?" he asked, concern in his voice. I pressed the bags against my chest, mumbling about trying not to drown. He chuckled, the sound soft, warm, grounding. "Get in. I'll give you a ride home." Normally, I might have hesitated. A married woman in a car with her husband's business partner. During a storm, it sounded like the setup to one of those cliched stories you click on, certain it could never happen to you. But at that moment, cold and soaked, and above all trusting him, I slid into the passenger seat. The warmth of the car wrapped around me, familiar and comforting. He took my groceries, setting them on the back seat. That small motion, the close proximity, made me suddenly aware of the space between us, of his presence, of the subtleties of his being, the faint creases at the corners of his eyes, the hint of gray threading through his hair. For a long minute, we sat in silence. Not an awkward silence, but a pause before something unspoken. "How have you really been?" he asked, breaking the quiet. Not the polite surface-level inquiry, but the one that demanded truth. I laughed softly. "You always ask like that. Like I have to tell you the real answer." "Maybe I care about the answer," he replied simply. His words landed with a weight I hadn't felt in years. My chest tightened. "I've been okay," I said, careful, hesitant. "You know, some days feel long, some feel empty, and some are fine." He glanced at me, concern clear in his eyes. "That doesn't sound like someone who's truly happy, Grace." I deflected, trying to talk about Mark's long hours, the busyness of life. He sighed softly. "Business is good," he said. "But good business doesn't always mean a good life." The honesty in his tone, the quiet acknowledgement of the human cost behind the facade struck a chord deep inside me. The park moment, we continued driving, the rain smearing the world into streaks of light and shadow. And then, almost hesitantly, he slowed down near a deserted park. "Why stop here?" I asked, heart racing, though a part of me already knew. "Because if I drop you off now," he said quietly, "you'll go inside, put away groceries, pretend everything's fine. And I'll go home pretending I don't think about you more than I should." My pulse quickened. "Isaac, I know it's complicated. I know it shouldn't be said. But I need to be honest right here, right now, before it's too late." The storm outside mirrored the tempest in my chest. Rain hammered the roof, thunder rolled across the horizon, and in that car, the world fell away. "I see you, Grace," he continued. "Not your routines, not your duties. You, the woman you are. And it's becoming impossible to pretend I don't feel something for you." Silence enveloped us. No one had ever looked at me, really seen me like that in years. The acknowledgement, the validation, it was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "I just needed you to know. Even if this is fleeting, even if nothing comes of it, I needed you to hear it." For a long while we sat in the car, fingers brushing lightly, sharing the silent weight of recognition and longing. It wasn't physical desire, was a deeper acknowledgement of our human need to be seen, to be valued, to exist beyond the confines of routine and expectation. Finally, I exhaled and asked him to take me home. He obeyed without hesitation, without pressure, respecting the fragile boundary between honesty and action. When the car stopped at my house, we exchanged a simple, profound look. No dramatic embrace, no whispered promises, Just the lingering truth. We had crossed an invisible threshold, seen each other clearly, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. Days after the next morning, life resumed its ordinary rhythm. Mark rushed out the door, half-eaten toast in hand. The sun poured through the curtains. The coffee machine hummed. Everything was the same, yet nothing felt normal. The awareness of Isaac, the memory of that night, lingered like a subtle ache. Later that day, I stepped outside for air, and there he was, across the street by his car, waiting almost casually. But the moment was charged. "I didn't want to bother you," he said, "but I needed to make sure you're okay." "Huh, I'm fine," I replied, my heartbeat betraying me. We spoke carefully, cautiously. No promises, no confessions of intent, just the acknowledgement that something had shifted. His restraint, his respect, made me trust him more. I needed clarity, not chaos. "I don't know what I'm choosing yet," I admitted. "You don't have to," he said. "Not today." That simple, honest boundary. It was intoxicating. It was the first time in years someone treated me with that level of care. Not as a wife, not as a responsibility, not as a fixture in someone else's life, but as a woman. A human being whose desires, whose loneliness, whose longing mattered. Inner reflections over the following days. I couldn't stop thinking. About what Isaac had said, about the recognition, about the quiet moments in the car, about how lonely one can feel even when married for decades, about how Isley routines mask emotional absence. And yet, despite the awareness of betrayal, the knowledge that the feelings were complicated, messy and impossible to categorize, I also felt alive, seen, heard, aware that my choices, my heart, still mattered. A week later, we kept our distance publicly, maintaining appearances. But each encounter, each shared glance carried weight. The tension wasn't dramatic or reckless, it was human. It was the understanding that connection isn't always about physical acts. It's about truth, honesty, and the courage to see someone as they truly are. Mark continued with his work, oblivious to the subtle storm in my heart. And I realized that my life had irrevocably changed, not because of a single night, but because of recognition, respect, and honesty. The story doesn't end with a scandalous affair. It ends with a revelation, an awakening. It ends with the recognition that sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't betrayal, it's invisibility. And sometimes the most transformative thing isn't passion, it's being truly seen. Asterisk, closing reflection. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know if Isaac will remain a distant figure in my life or if circumstances will pull us closer. What I do know is that for the first time in decades, I feel fully awake. I feel capable of choosing my own heart. I feel visible, valued, acknowledged. Sometimes the storms in life bring clarity. Sometimes the rain doesn't just wash the streets. It awakens the heart. And on that rainy evening in a parked car with Isaac, I discovered something profound, that being seen is more powerful than being loved. That recognition, honesty, and understanding can change a life. Even when everything seems unchanged on the surface, as I close this story, I leave you with this thought. Our hearts, even in the quietest years, still have the capacity to awaken, to feel, to hope, and to choose. And perhaps in hearing my story, you might see yourself to remembering that it's never too late to be seen. It's never too late to choose your own truth.